Chapter 29 in Douglas Adams, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. On a small, obscure world, somewhere in the middle of nowhere in particular, nowhere, that is, that could ever be found, since it is protected by a vast field of unprobability to only which 6 men in this galaxy have a key, it was raining. It was bucketing down and had been for months, for hours. It beat the top of the sea into a mist, it pounded the trees, it churned and slopped a stretch of scrubby land near the sea into a mud bath. The rain pelted and danced on the corrugated iron roof of the small shack that stood in the middle of this patch of scrubby land. It obliterated the small, rough pathway that led from the shack down to the seashore, and smashed apart the neat piles of interesting shells which had been placed there. The noise of the rain on the roof of the shack was deafening within, but went largely unnoticed by its occupant, whose attention was otherwise engaged. He was a tall, shambling man with rough, straw-colored hair that was damp from the leaking roof. His clothes were shabby, his back was hunched, and his eyes, though open, seemed closed. In his shack was an old beaten-up armchair, an old scratched table, an old mattress, some cushions, and a stove that was small but warm. There was also an old and slightly weather-beaten cat, and this was currently the focus of the man's attention. He bent his shambling form over it. "Pussy, pussy, pussy," he said. "Coochie, coochie, coochie, coo. Pussy want his fish? Nice piece of fish. Pussy want it?" The cat seemed undecided on the matter. It pawed rather condescendingly at the piece of fish the man was holding out, and then got distracted by a piece of dust on the floor. "Pussy not eat his fish? Pussy get thin and waste away, I think," said the man. Doubt crept into his voice. "I imagine this will happen," he said. "But how can I tell?" He proffered the fish again. "Pussy think," he said. "Eat fish or not eat fish? I think it is better if I don't get involved," he sighed. "I think fish is nice, but then I think that rain is wet, so who am I to judge?" He left the fish on the floor for the cat and retired to his seat. "Ah, I seem to see you eating it," he said at last, as the cat exhausted the entertainment possibilities of the speck of dust and pounced onto the fish. "I like it when I see you eat your fish," said the man, "because in my mind you will waste away if you don't." He picked up from the table a piece of paper and a stub of a pencil. He held one in one hand and the other in the other, and experimented with different ways of bringing them together. He tried holding the pencil under the paper, then over the paper, then next to the paper. He tried wrapping the paper around the pencil. Then he tried rubbing the stubby end of the pencil against the paper, and then he tried rubbing the sharp end of the pencil against the paper. It made a mark, and he was delighted with the discovery, as he was every day. He picked up another piece of paper from the table. This had a crossword on it. He studied it briefly and filled in a couple of clues before losing interest. He tried sitting on one of his hands and was intrigued by the feel of the bones of his hip. "Fish come from far away," he said, "or so I'm told, or so I imagine I'm told. When the men come, or when in my mind the men come in their 6 black shiny ships, do they come in your mind too? What do you see, pussy?" He looked at the cat, which was more concerned with getting the fish down as rapidly as possible than it was with these speculations. "And when I hear their questions, do you hear questions? What do their voices mean to you? Perhaps you just think they're singing songs to you." He reflected on this and saw the flaw in the supposition. "Perhaps they are singing songs to you," he said, and I just think they're asking me questions." He paused again. Sometimes he would pause for days just to see what it was like. "Do you think they came today?" he said. "I do. There's mud on the floor, cigarettes and whiskey on the table, and fish on a plate for you, and a memory of them in my mind. Hardly conclusive evidence, I know, but then all evidence is circumstantial. And look what else they've left for me." He reached over to the table and pulled some things off it. Crosswords, dictionary, and a calculator. He played with the calculator for an hour while the cat went to sleep and the rain outside continued to pour. Eventually, he put the calculator aside. "I think I must be right in thinking they ask me questions," he said. "To come all that way and leave all these things just for the privilege of singing songs to you would be very strange behavior. Or so it seems to me. Who can tell? Who can tell?" "You can sing to my cat if you like." "Would he like that?" said Zaphod. "You'd better ask him," said the man. "Does he talk?" said Zaphod. "I have no memory of him talking," said the man, "but I am very unreliable." Zarneywood pulled some notes out of a pocket. "Now," he said, "you do rule the universe, do you?" "How can I tell?" said the man. Zarneywood tipped off a note on the paper. "How long have you been doing this?" "Ah, this is a question about the past, is it? Zarni Whoop looked at him in puzzlement. This wasn't exactly what he had been expecting. Yes, he said. How can I tell, said the man, that the past isn't a fictional design to account for the discrepancy between my immediate physical sensations and my state of mind? Zarni Whoop stared at him. The steam began to rise from his sodden clothes. So, you answer all questions like this, he said. The man answered quickly. I say what it occurs to me to say when I think I hear people say things. More I cannot say. Zaphod laughed happily. I'll drink to that, he said, and pulled out this bottle of Jank's spirit. He leaped and handed the bottle to the ruler of the universe, who took it with pleasure. Good on you, great ruler, he said. Tell it like it is. No, listen to me, said Zarni Whoop. People come to you, do they? In ships? I think so, said the man. He handed the bottle to Trillian. And they ask you, said Zarni Whoop, to make decisions for them. About people's lives, about worlds, about economies, about wars, about everything going on out there in the universe. Out there, said the man. Out where? Out there, said Zarni Whoop, pointing at the door. How can you tell there's anything out there, said the man politely. The doors closed. The rain continued to pound on the roof. Inside the shack it was warm. But you know there's a whole universe out there, cried Zarni Whoop. You can't dodge your responsibilities by saying they don't exist. The ruler of the universe thought for a long while Zarni Whoop quivered with anger. You're very sure of your facts, he said at last. I couldn't trust the thinking of a man who takes the universe, if there is one, for granted. Zarni Whoop quivered, but was silent. I only decide about my universe, continued the man quietly. My universe is my eyes and my ears. Anything else is hearsay. But don't you believe in anything? The man shrugged and picked up his cat. I don't understand what you mean, he said. I don't understand that what you decide in this shack of yours affects the lives and fates of millions of people. This is all monstrously wrong. I don't know. I've never met all these people you speak of, and neither, I suspect, have you. They only exist in words we hear. It is folly to say to you what is happening to other people. Only they know. If they exist, they have their own universes of their eyes and ears. Trillian said, I think I'm just popping outside for a moment. She left and walked into the rain. Do you believe other people exist? Insisted Zarni Whoop. I have an opinion. How can I say? I'd better see what's up with Trillian, said Zaphod and slipped out. Outside, he said to her, I think the universe is in pretty good hands, yeah? Very good, said Trillian. And they walked off into the rain. Inside, Zarni Whoop continued. But don't you understand that people live or die on your word? The ruler of the universe waited for as long as he could. When he heard the faint sound of the ship's engine starting, he spoke to cover it. It's nothing to do with me, he said. I am not involved with people. The Lord knows I am not a cruel man. Ah, barked Zarni Whoop. You say the Lord. You believe in something. My cat, said the man benignly, picking it up and stroking it. I call him the Lord, and I am kind to him. All right, said Zarni Whoop, pressing home his point. How do you know he exists? How do you know he knows you to be kind, or enjoys what he thinks of you as your kindness? I don't, said the man with a smile. I have no idea. It merely pleases me to behave in a certain way that appears to be a cat. Do you behave any differently? Please, I think I am tired. Zarniwoop heaved a thoroughly dissatisfied sigh and looked about. Where are the other two? He said suddenly. What other two? Said the ruler of the universe, settling back into his chair and refilling his whiskey glass. Beeblebrox and the girl, the two who were here. I remember no one. The past is a fiction to account for. Stuff it, snapped Zarniwoop and ran out into the rain. There was no ship. The rain continued to churn the mud. There was no sign to show where the ship had been. He hollered into the rain. He turned and ran back to the shack and found it locked. The ruler of the universe dozed lightly in his chair. After a while, he played with the pencil and paper again, and was delighted when he discovered how to make a mark with the one on the other. Various noises continued outside, but he didn't know whether they were real or not. He then talked to his table for a week to see how it would react. And that is the end of chapter 29.